guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Liana, and today I'll be sharing with you how to make the trendy maxi dress for this summer season. I've seen this dress show up in many different websites and brands, and I thought I would give it a go. I asked my followers on Instagram whether to make it or not, and there was a lot of people that voted yes. So here I am making this beautiful, nice, trendy dress, which looks super comfy, and ideally I would normally make it in a linen. But because I have so many fabrics at home, I'm going to use what I have already. And yeah, I can't wait to show you guys how to go about it. Before I jump into my video today, guys, I wanted to share with you my jewelry that I'm wearing. My earrings is from the amazing and beautiful jewelry brand Ana Luisa, and they are currently running their biggest sale of the year. Any of their jewelry pieces, you can get 10% off using my code down below. I've also included it in my description. Majority of their items are also 60% off, so definitely go check them out. So without further ado, let's jump into my video today, guys. Alright guys, so first things first, what I'm going to do is create the pattern of the front bust area. So just using some paper, I'm going to work from it on a half kind of block. So just putting it on my half body, I'm going to create the dart to shape my bust area. So I'm just going to roughly put it around here. I'm just creating that little fold there to fit the curve of my bust. So once that's been done, I'm going to draw in the shape of the kind of front of the dress. So the pattern piece looks like this. So once I've got the outline, I'm able to kind of draw in the seam allowance, which I'm going to add 1 centimeter all around the bodice, drawn here. And essentially this pattern piece right here is just half of the bodice. So when I put this to the fabric, which I'm going to do now, I'm going to make sure the fabric is folded in half, because when you open it up, it'll become the full front piece of the bodice. So after we've pinned down the pattern piece to the fabric, we're just going to go ahead and cut it. And then after this, we're going to reflect it and cut it yet again. So there's going to be 2 pieces of it. So this is going to get formed into the back part of the top dress. And I'm using the same fabric only because I won't be including any other lining, so it's just easier to use the same fabric. Alright, before we continue, I just thought I'd give a hot tip. Whenever you're working with a waistline, it's good to add in a curve line at the bottom. This just creates a nice complementary fit to your body as opposed to having a straight line for the waist. So I just thought I would let you guys know before we continue on. So while I'm doing that, I'm just adding in some markings for the dart, so you can call them notches. It's just so that I know where I'm sewing at afterwards. Moving on to our next pattern pieces, we've got 3 rectangle pattern pieces here which form into the skirt later on. I've calculated the width of each one to be 32 centimeters because it is the calculation between my waist to my ankle divided by 3. For anyone that's got a different height to me, I'm just an average height. So if you are taller or shorter, I would recommend calculating from your waist to your ankle divided by 3. As for the lengths, these are all in half scale because I've folded the fabric in half and cut it out from there. So we've got 82 centimeters for the first layer of the skirt, 117 centimeters for the second layer of the skirt, and the third panel piece is 182 centimeters long. I would recommend cutting it in half scale where you fold the fabric in half, just so that it's easier to work with and you're not wasting the fabric as much. And now we're ready to start sewing the panel pieces together. Next, we're going to sew down the darts of the front top, the front bodice, as well as the back bodice. So here I've got some straps which I've created using bias binding. I've used a 12mm classic one, and all I've done is just fold it in half and done an edge stitch all along it. It's quite a lengthy piece because it was in the packet, and the packet was, I think, 5 meters long. So using that strap, I'm going to cut my first pair of loops, which will be sewn into the side seams of the dress, which will be where the main straps will get fed into through the loops. after cutting the first pair of loops, which are 4 centimeters long, I'm going to cut another pair of 4 centimeters straps. And then for the last 2 pieces, they will be the main straps, which will form the halter neck and essentially the lace up at the back part of the dress. So this strap will have to be a long one because of the lace up, and that is 120 centimeters long, in which I've cut. So I'm just going to tuck in that first strap in the corner here, and that's going to be where the halter neck starts. So I'm just going to sew across it so that we can sandwich it there. And we're going to do the same thing, sandwiching that other part of the strap to the corner of our top yet again. Alright, so we're able to move on to adding the small loops to the side seams. So I'm going to grab the first loop and add it right to the corner between the armhole and the side seam, sandwiching it in between the 2 fabrics and sewing it across directly. And then I'm going to add the other loop just 2 centimeters below and then sewing it directly again. Alright, and then we're able to reflect the same thing on the other side seam. So we're going to grab one of the loop straps and just sandwich it right in the corner between the armhole and the side seam and just sew directly down, and then another loophole about 2 centimeters down from the first loop and sewing it down, sandwiched in between yet again. So there we go, there's the loops all done on the side seams of the left and right side, and we're ready for the next step. So this is an optional part for anyone that's had their pattern a bit puckering at the front. So this is from the pattern piece, being that the top halter neck part is a bit wide. It may not be the case for all of you, but in case it is, there's ways around it fitting over your bust area to avoid the puckering from happening. So what I've done here is my mum has just taken in a few centimeters at the corners so that it looks nice and subtle, and essentially they're going to act as darts to make it nice and fitting around my bust area. Beautiful. So now that we've pinned down the darts, we're able to sew it down at the back of the top so that it doesn't show up. And I've just ensured that each of the reduced amount is equal on each side of the darts. So first things first, what I'm going to do is sew down the seam allowance for each of the tiered rectangle pattern pieces that we've got, just so that we can overlock them and then start attaching them to the bodice. I've kind of labeled each one number 1, number 2, number 3, just so that we know the order in which we're attaching the rectangle pattern pieces to the dress. Alright, so I've just finished overlocking all my rectangle pattern pieces. I've used my Pegasus industrial machine to do it, and it's done such a beautiful job. I just forgot to film it, but basically we're ready to attach it to the bodice now that the overlocking is all done. And just before we sew the top layer of the skirt to the bodice, I'm just going to sew the bottom edge of the top layers together so that they are nice and firm together and everything is nice and neatly sewn together with the skirt later on. So here I've got my back waistband, which I've created as another pattern piece that I forgot to include earlier before. And it's just a nice simple one, 8 centimeters width, which will get folded in later in half. And the length is just the exact same length as the back part of our skirt. And what I'm going to do is just add some pins to match up with the notches. So the center back will match up with the center back and the sides will match up with the sides. It's handy to add 1 centimeter seam allowance to the edges of the waistband. That way we can fold it in and kind of seal off any raw edges. And now we're ready to attach the back waistband to the back part of the skirt. Following the guidelines such as the pins and the notches will help ensure 2 pattern pieces are sewn together nice and neatly. And also to note, before I've sewn the waistband to the skirt, I've actually folded in and sewn the sides of the waistband so that no raw edges are shown. So here I've got a little piece of elastic which I've calculated to fit directly on the back waistband of my dress, and this is measured out so that I can easily fit into the dress as well as slip out of the dress. And how I'm going to sew it is just by folding in half the waistband and kind of sandwiching the elastic in between in the middle And as easy as that, that's the waistband done with the new elastic band. And there you have it. The elastic is now put through the back of the waistband, and we don't have to worry about not being able to fit into the dress, because we're able to exactly put on the dress and get out of the dress nice and easily with this elastic part at the back of the dress. So now we're ready to sew down the first layer of the skirt to the front bodice. So I'm just going to match the notches accordingly on each of the pattern pieces, and this will help assist us as a guide for where to sew and where to create an even amount of gathering along the seam. Now that all the pins are in place, we're able to start sewing the gathering of the first layer of skirt to the bodice. So the technique in which my mom has done here is that she's actually sewn the gathering nice and slowly on the sewing machine, and just using a pin, just pushing slightly bit by bit a bit of fabric to sew across it. So gradually you'll start to see the gathering start to take place. As you can see, it's starting to look very beautifully and coming well and truly together. And we're just going to keep doing this all along until we reach the end. Alright, so next we're able to move on to the second layer of the skirt, and we're going to do the exact same process as before and kind of repeating the gathering effect. And most importantly, what I wanted to note is that I have actually divided the radius of the skirt into quarter measurements and just putting pins in place so that we're able to keep an even amount of gathering along the radius of the layered skirt. Beautiful, and now we're able to move on to the final layer of the skirt, and just repeating all the process that we've been doing with the first and second layer, and sewing nice and steadily, beating in that gathering effect as we're sewing. And on a final note, to finish off the dress, we're going to overlock all the raw edges of the inside skirt as well as the hemming of the bottom skirt. How I've done my hemming is folding it up by 3 centimeters and overlocking that raw edge. And there you have it, the final dress is complete. Now we're ready to go enjoy the summer season in our favorite comfortable dress, well, at least my favorite dress. I hope you guys enjoyed watching today's video, and for those of you that are interested in Ana Luisa's jewelry and their big sale that they have happening at the moment, you can get 10% off on any purchases using my code down below, as well as enjoying all the sale items that they have during this time. Hope you guys have a happy new year, and until next time, I'll see you guys next year.